Princess Lysera of Thryn stood on the balcony of the royal palace, looking out over the city. The twin suns of her world cast a golden glow across the towers and streets below. Everything was perfect and orderly. Every citizen followed the rules, every building aligned with precision, and every thought seemed to flow in harmony. Yet Lysera felt a strange emptiness inside. Despite the beauty and perfection, there was a part of her mind that wondered if there was more to life than what she had been taught. Her curiosity about the universe had always set her apart from her peers. While other members of the royal court focused on politics, etiquette, and maintaining appearances, Lysera spent her hours studying old records of distant civilizations, imagining how beings on other planets lived, thought, and felt. She had read about humans, a rare species from a planet far from Thryn, and the stories had fascinated her. Humans were said to be unpredictable, capable of both incredible courage and unusual mistakes. They were nothing like the Thryn citizens, who valued harmony, logic, and the collective mind above all. Today, her curiosity would finally be satisfied. A human diplomat and explorer had arrived in the city. Captain Elias Vance was not a mere visitor. He was part of a special mission sent to establish relations between humans and Thryn. Lysera's heart raced at the thought of meeting him. She had prepared carefully, reading every report available about human behavior, yet she knew that no report could truly convey what it was like to stand in the presence of someone so different from herself. The palace corridors were busy with preparations for the formal reception. Courtiers moved gracefully, ensuring that every detail reflected the perfection of the Thryn kingdom. Lysera walked among them, her steps light but her mind heavy with anticipation. She knew that appearances mattered, yet a part of her longed to speak freely with the human, to understand him beyond the official titles and scripted conversations. When Captain Elias Vance finally entered the grand hall, Lysera noticed him immediately. He was taller than she had imagined, with an easy confidence that seemed natural rather than trained. His clothes were simple but functional, unlike the ornate robes worn by Thryn officials. He moved through the crowd with calm awareness, greeting each person politely, yet without any hint of the rigid formality that her people valued so highly. Lysera observed him quietly, hidden among the other guests. She noticed how he listened more than he spoke, how he seemed to analyze situations in an unusual way. He was not trying to impress anyone with displays of wealth or knowledge. Instead, he relied on something deeper: reasoning, intuition, and a strange warmth that drew people to him. The reception proceeded as planned, but soon a crisis arose that no one had anticipated. The palace energy core, a massive device that powered the city, began to malfunction. Alarms rang through the halls, and citizens gathered in panic. The Council of Thryn engineers immediately rushed to the core, attempting to stabilize it. Lysera watched as they consulted the Central Intelligence Network, a system designed to provide perfect solutions. Yet despite all their knowledge, the engineers hesitated, unsure of the best course of action. Elias stepped forward calmly. Without consulting the network, he examined the problem and proposed a solution. It was simple, yet brilliant. A combination of observation, logic, and intuition. He instructed the engineers to take specific steps, and within moments, the energy core stabilized. The lights returned to the city, and the panic subsided. Lysera's heart leaped. She had expected humans to be unpredictable, perhaps even reckless. But what she saw was far more remarkable. Elias had acted decisively, using his mind and judgment rather than relying solely on technology. In that moment, she realized that humans possessed qualities that her people had almost forgotten: courage, creativity, and the ability to think independently. Later, when the reception resumed, Lysera found herself walking toward Elias. She wanted to speak with him, to understand the way he thought. The court noticed her movement and whispered among themselves. It was unusual for a princess to approach a visitor without a formal introduction or invitation. Yet Lysera could not ignore the pull she felt toward this human. "Captain Vance," she said softly as she approached him, "I must thank you for what you did. You saved the city today." Elias smiled, a warm and unassuming gesture. "I only did what seemed right," he said. "Sometimes, the obvious solution is hidden, because people overcomplicate things." Lysera was intrigued. His words were simple, yet they carried a weight that her people's polished speeches often lacked. She realized that humans did not rely solely on knowledge or tradition. They relied on understanding, empathy, and creativity. These were qualities that her society admired in theory but rarely encouraged in practice. Over the next few days, Lysera observed Elias closely. She noticed how he treated everyone with respect, from the highest-ranking officials to the lowest-ranking workers. He asked questions not to show off his intelligence, but to learn and understand. He made mistakes occasionally, but he also learned from them quickly, adapting and improving with every attempt. The palace staff began to notice changes as well. Lysera encouraged discussions that were previously forbidden, allowing advisors to propose bold solutions and explore ideas outside the usual protocols. At first, there was resistance. The citizens of Thryn were accustomed to order and predictability, and the sudden freedom of thought was unsettling. Yet slowly, they began to see the benefits. New strategies emerged, and problems that once seemed unsolvable found creative resolutions. One evening, Lysera invited Elias to the balcony, away from the formalities of the palace. The twin suns were setting, casting a soft glow across the city. She asked him a question she had been pondering ever since his arrival. Why do humans fight so hard to preserve individuality when it seems easier to follow the collective? Elias looked at her thoughtfully. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he gazed at the horizon, considering the question carefully. Humans fight for individuality because it allows us to grow, to make choices, and to learn from them, he said finally. If everyone always followed the same path, we would never discover new ideas, new solutions, or new ways of living. We value freedom because it gives life meaning, even if it comes with risk. Lysera listened intently, feeling a spark of something she had never experienced before. Hope, curiosity, and a sense of possibility. His answer challenged everything she had been taught. In Thryn society, conformity was safety, and deviation was considered dangerous. Yet here was a being who demonstrated that courage and creativity could bring strength, not chaos. The days that followed were filled with small experiments. Lysera encouraged advisors to think independently, to propose bold strategies, and to act without waiting for the network's approval. Some ideas failed, but others succeeded in remarkable ways. The city began to feel alive in a way it never had before, buzzing with creativity, innovation, and energy. Through it all, Lysera watched Elias carefully. She began to understand that his presence was more than a diplomatic visit. It was a lesson, a guide for how her people could evolve without abandoning their values. She realized that humans were not just visitors from another world, they were catalysts for change, capable of inspiring others to reach beyond what they thought possible. One night, as she stood on the balcony alone, Lysera reflected on the events of the past week. She realized that her curiosity had been the first step towards something greater. The human before her had shown her that courage and individuality were not threats but tools for building a better future. She felt a deep sense of determination. Lysera knew that she could not simply return to the life she had led before. Something inside her had shifted. She was no longer content to follow the rules blindly, or to live in a world where perfection meant uniformity. She wanted to explore, to learn, and to lead her people toward a future where creativity and courage could flourish alongside harmony and order. As the twin suns disappeared behind the horizon, casting the city in twilight, Lysera felt a sense of purpose she had never known. She would follow this path, guided by the lessons of a human who had arrived from a distant world and changed everything she thought she knew. Elias had arrived as a visitor, but his presence had sparked a transformation that could not be undone. Lysera smiled to herself, knowing that the story of her kingdom and perhaps her own life was about to change forever. Princess Lysera could not stop thinking about Captain Elias Vance and his words. His answer about individuality had struck a chord in her heart. one that had been silent for many years. She wandered through the palace gardens early in the morning, letting her thoughts drift among the blooming alien flora, each plant perfectly arranged yet subtly different, as if nature itself wanted to hint at diversity. The more she thought, the more she realized that her people, though brilliant and disciplined, had lost something essential. They were safe, orderly, and predictable. But they were also constrained. Lysera decided she could not remain passive. If humans could bring fresh ideas and bold thinking, why could Thryn not benefit from them? She resolved to experiment quietly, testing whether her people could embrace individuality without endangering society. But first, she needed to understand Elias better. She requested private discussions with him under the guise of diplomatic etiquette. But in truth, she wanted to see how a human thought, how he approached problems, and how he viewed the world around him. Elias welcomed the conversations with calm curiosity. Unlike the Thryn advisors, who often spoke in long, structured statements, he answered simply and honestly. He shared stories of human exploration, of risks taken and lessons learned. He described the human spirit as something that thrived on challenge, uncertainty, and even failure. Lysera was fascinated. These were concepts her society rarely acknowledged. In Thryn, failure was something to be avoided at all costs, a blemish that could damage reputations and careers. Elias, however, spoke of mistakes as opportunities for growth, a notion that seemed revolutionary to her. Meanwhile, political tensions simmered beneath the surface. A neighboring kingdom, sensing the arrival of humans, saw an opportunity to exploit the changes in Thryn. Rumors of Lysera's private conversations with Elias reached their ears, and they began to plot subtle ways to destabilize her position. Within the palace, some advisors whispered concerns that the princess's new fascination with human ideas could threaten tradition and order. Lysera had to be careful. She could not reveal her intentions openly, or her authority might be questioned. One day, a critical problem emerged in the city's water distribution system. Pipes had corroded, and entire districts were at risk of losing access to clean water. The Council of Engineers, following the traditional methods, hesitated to act decisively. They feared taking unconventional measures without consulting the Central Intelligence Network. Lysera saw an opportunity to test a human-inspired approach. She called a small meeting with Elias and a handful of open-minded engineers. "We cannot wait for the network to guide us," she said. "Let us think independently. What ideas do you have?" Elias leaned forward and spoke plainly. "We should examine the problem directly. Look at the damaged pipes, test the pressure, and consider alternative materials. Sometimes the solution is simpler than the network predicts." The engineers were skeptical, but Lysera encouraged them. "Trust yourselves. Trust your reasoning. It may feel unusual, but the goal is to solve the problem." Following Elias's guidance, the team devised a solution that combined careful observation with creative engineering. They rerouted water temporarily, used reinforced materials for the damaged sections, and monitored the system closely. Within hours, the city's water flow was restored, and the risk of shortages was eliminated. Lysera observed quietly, her heart swelling with a sense of possibility. Her people had succeeded without relying solely on the network, and they had done so with courage and initiative. It was a small victory, but to her, it felt monumental. For the first time, she saw that individuality, when encouraged and guided, could strengthen her society rather than weaken it. As the days passed, Lysera continued her private lessons with Elias. She asked questions that had long lingered in her mind. How do humans make decisions when the outcome is uncertain? Why do you value personal choice, even when it brings risk? How do you inspire others to follow ideas that may seem strange or dangerous? Elias answered thoughtfully, sharing stories from his experiences on Earth and other human colonies. He described the delicate balance humans maintained between risk and reward, the way they collaborated while respecting personal initiative, and the deep sense of responsibility that came with freedom. Lysera was captivated. Each conversation left her mind racing with new possibilities for Thryn. But not everyone welcomed these ideas. Some of Lysera's advisors grew wary, whispering warnings of unrest and rebellion. They argued that the collective had kept the city safe for generations, and that encouraging individualism could lead to chaos. Lysera listened patiently, but she did not waver. She understood that fear often accompanied change, and that true leadership required courage not only from the ruler but from those who followed. One evening, as the twin suns set and the city bathed in a soft golden glow, Lysera and Elias walked along the palace corridors in quiet conversation. "You are changing things," Elias said gently. "Be careful. Some may resist. Some may not understand your intentions." Lysera nodded. "I know. But I cannot ignore what I have seen. My people are capable of more than they realize. They can think, create, and act independently, without losing the harmony that binds them. They need to learn that for themselves." Elias smiled, sensing her determination. "Then trust them. And trust yourself. Leadership is not about control. It is about guidance, inspiration, and faith in others." Encouraged by his words, Lysera began implementing small initiatives. She allowed her advisors to propose alternative solutions to problems, encouraged creative contests among engineers and scientists, and supported citizens who experimented with art, music, and inventions outside the usual norms. Some initiatives failed, but many succeeded, producing innovations that improved life in the city and delighted its citizens. As word of these changes spread, the people of Thrinn began to respond. Some were cautious, hesitant to break tradition, but others embraced the new freedom. They discovered joy in thinking independently, pride in creating solutions, and satisfaction in exploring their unique talents. Slowly, the city began to buzz with energy and excitement, something it had not felt in generations. However, the rival kingdom continued its covert plots. Lysera received anonymous warnings that spies were observing her actions and reporting them to enemies who sought to exploit any signs of weakness. She realized that encouraging individuality was not without risk. A misstep could be used against her, and the city could be endangered. Yet Lysera did not retreat. She had seen the potential for transformation, and she believed that the rewards outweighed the risks. She continued to learn from Elias, absorbing human approaches to problem-solving, leadership, and morality. She began to see that humans were not reckless as her people feared. They were adaptable, courageous, and deeply committed to the welfare of their communities. One day, a serious threat emerged. A malfunction in the city's energy grid caused sudden blackouts in several districts. Panic spread quickly, and the engineers struggled to respond using traditional methods. Lysera called upon Elias and a team of volunteers. "We cannot wait for the network to dictate every step," she said. "We must act with creativity, judgment, and courage. This is our chance to prove that our people can rise to any challenge." Elias and Lysera worked side by side, guiding the team. They observed the problem directly, tested solutions, and implemented a plan that relied on both careful calculation and flexible thinking. Citizens watched in amazement as the city's power was restored, not by the collective network alone, but by the initiative of individuals willing to take responsibility. The success was celebrated widely, and Lysera felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had seen firsthand how humans approached problems, how courage and creativity could overcome obstacles, and how individuality could coexist with harmony. More importantly, she had begun to see the potential for lasting change in her own society. As the evening fell, Lysera stood on the balcony once more, looking out over the city. The lights flickered back on, illuminating the streets, towers, and people below. She realized that change was not instantaneous, and that not everyone would embrace it at once. But the seeds had been planted, and she could feel them taking root in the hearts and minds of her people. Elias joined her quietly. "You have started something extraordinary," he said. "Remember, transformation takes time, patience, and courage. Your people are watching, learning, and growing because of you." Lysera smiled. "It feels alive, in a way I never thought possible. I have always known that there was more to life than perfection. But now I see it clearly. Humans are different, yet what they teach me can make my people stronger, happier, and wiser. I never imagined that one being could inspire so much. Elias nodded. Sometimes, all it takes is a question, a thought, or an idea. And from there, everything can change. Lysera realized he was right. His presence had already changed her forever. But she also understood that the real change would come from the people themselves, as they learned to embrace courage, creativity, and individuality. The human had shown her the path, but she would lead her people along it, guiding them toward a future richer than anything they had imagined. As night descended, the stars twinkling above, Lysera felt hope stir in her chest. The city was alive, not just with light, but with possibility. And somewhere in the distance, she knew that humans, with their curiosity, courage, and ingenuity, would continue to shape not only her world, but her own destiny. Princess Lysera woke to the soft hum of the palace in the early morning. The twin suns had not yet risen, but the city already whispered with life. She walked to the balcony, watching citizens begin their daily routines, each movement precise, yet tinged with newfound curiosity. Since her experiments in encouraging individuality, the city had changed subtly but unmistakably. People were thinking for themselves, testing ideas, and even smiling more freely than before. It was a small revolution, quiet yet powerful, and Lysera felt a deep satisfaction. Her thoughts, however, were far from at ease. The rival kingdom continued its quiet schemes, and whispers in the palace hinted that some Thryn officials were growing uneasy with her new policies. Lysera knew she had to be cautious, but she could not ignore the momentum that had begun. Change, she realized, always came with risk. It was a delicate balance between encouraging growth and maintaining stability. Elias entered the balcony quietly, carrying a cup of warm liquid from the palace kitchen. "Good morning," he said softly, offering her the cup. His presence was calming, a steady reminder of the ideas that had already begun to reshape her thinking. "Good morning," Lysera replied, taking the cup. "The city feels alive today. People are thinking in ways I never thought possible. Some of them are even experimenting with ideas I did not suggest. That is the essence of growth," Elias said. "Once the seed is planted, it must be nurtured. But it also has to grow on its own. The best lessons are not always the ones we teach directly. Sometimes, the world teaches them for us." Lysera nodded, understanding the truth in his words. She had guided her people gently, introducing small changes and encouraging initiative. The results were already visible. But she knew the real test lay ahead. Whether her citizens could embrace these changes fully when faced with a real challenge. That challenge arrived sooner than expected. Reports came of a sudden and dangerous natural phenomenon, a violent storm approaching from the outer regions of the planet. Unlike previous storms, this one threatened multiple districts simultaneously, with the potential to overwhelm the city's defenses. The Council of Engineers convened immediately, but once again, hesitation dominated the room. Their calculations were precise, but their plans lacked flexibility. They were trained to rely on protocol and the Central Intelligence Network. Yet the network could not provide guidance for this unique situation. Lysera stepped forward. "We cannot wait for the network to decide," she said firmly. "We must act now, using our minds, our creativity, and our courage. Each of you has ideas. Speak them. Propose solutions. Trust yourselves." The engineers exchanged glances, some hesitant, others inspired by the princess's words. Lysera turned to Elias. "Will you assist them? Show them how humans approach unexpected challenges?" Elias nodded. "I will guide them, but you must lead. The people need to see their leader act with confidence and clarity." For hours, Lysera and Elias worked alongside the engineers, analyzing the storm's trajectory, reinforcing barriers, and coordinating evacuations in vulnerable districts. Unlike the rigid approach the network would have demanded, they adapted constantly, testing solutions, adjusting strategies, and learning from each small mistake. Citizens watched in amazement as their leaders acted decisively, combining discipline with creativity in ways never before seen in Thrinn. By nightfall, the storm had passed. Damage was minimal, thanks to the quick thinking and independent initiative of both citizens and officials. Lysera stood in the city square, looking at the faces of her people. They were tired, but exhilarated. Many whispered among themselves, realizing for the first time that their ideas mattered, that their actions could make a difference, and that individuality could exist alongside harmony. Elias approached her quietly. "They are beginning to understand," he said. "You have given them a chance to see what they are capable of. Leadership is not about control. It is about empowerment." Lysera smiled, feeling a deep pride in her people. "I see it now. I always knew they were capable, but I never realized how much courage and ingenuity they had inside. Humans, you have shown me a new way to lead, a new way to see life itself." As the days turned into weeks, Lysera continued her work, introducing more structured opportunities for independent thought. She established councils where ideas were debated openly, workshops for young inventors and artists, and simulations to solve complex problems without relying solely on the central network. Some experiments failed, but each failure was treated as a lesson, a chance to grow stronger and smarter. The changes began to ripple beyond the palace and the city. Neighboring districts took notice, and even the rival kingdom began to reassess its view of Thrinn. They had expected weakness, hesitation, and disarray, but instead, they saw a society adapting quickly, learning from experience, and thriving in ways their rigid traditions could not match. Lysera's small revolution was already inspiring others beyond her borders. However, not all was smooth. Some officials, unwilling to accept the new ways, began plotting to undermine her authority. They spread rumors about her reliance on a human visitor, questioning whether she was prioritizing alien needs over her people's traditions. Lysera knew she had to act carefully. She could not confront them openly without risking division. Yet she could not allow fear to dominate the city once more. She decided to address her people directly. In a grand assembly, she spoke from the balcony overlooking the square. Her voice was calm but firm, resonating with the determination she had discovered in herself. "My people, I have seen your courage. I have seen your creativity. I have seen how you can rise to any challenge when you trust yourselves. Change is not easy, and it may be frightening at times, but it is also the path to growth. Do not fear your own ideas. Do not fear your own abilities. You are capable of greatness beyond what you have imagined." The crowd listened in silence, absorbing her words. Slowly, they began to cheer, their voices filling the square with hope and determination. Even the skeptics could not deny the truth of what they had witnessed. For the first time in generations, the citizens of Thrinn felt the power of their own potential. Elias watched from the side, impressed by Lysera's clarity and courage. He knew that the changes she was implementing were more than policy, they were transformation. She was not simply introducing new rules. She was inspiring her people to embrace a philosophy of growth, courage, and individuality. The lessons of humans were taking root in alien soil, and the results were extraordinary. Yet challenges continued to arise. The rival kingdom intensified its efforts, sending spies and saboteurs to test the loyalty of Thrinn citizens. One night, Lysera discovered a plot to disrupt the city's communications network, a vital system for coordination during emergencies. She acted quickly, assembling a team of engineers and volunteers to prevent the sabotage. Unlike previous crises, this time she relied heavily on the independent thinking of her team. Each member proposed strategies, debated options, and made decisions on the spot. The operation was a success, and the saboteurs were apprehended. Lysera realized that this was the true test of her reforms. It was not enough for citizens to think creatively in controlled experiments. They had to apply their skills under pressure, in real situations that threatened their safety. And they had succeeded. She felt a deep pride and satisfaction, knowing that the combination of courage, ingenuity, and trust in individuality had saved the city once again. Over time, Lizara's perspective began to shift further. She recognized that leadership was not about maintaining perfection but about nurturing potential. She had always believed that rules and order were the pillars of a strong society, but she now understood that freedom, creativity, and personal initiative were equally essential. Humans, with their unpredictable and courageous nature, had shown her that true strength came from balance between guidance and independence, between tradition and innovation. One afternoon, she asked Elias to join her in the palace observatory. The twin suns were high in the sky, illuminating the city with brilliance. "Elias," she said, "you have taught me more than I ever imagined. But I wonder, how do humans inspire others to embrace change without causing fear or chaos?" Elias smiled, considering the question. Change always brings uncertainty. People may resist at first, because fear is natural. But when they see the results, when they experience success and empowerment, fear gives way to confidence. The key is trust. Trust in yourself, trust in others, and the willingness to lead by example. Lysera nodded. She realized that this was the moment she had been preparing for, the point at which her people would fully embrace the philosophy she had learned from humans. It would not be instantaneous, and not everyone would accept it immediately. But the path was clear. In the weeks that followed, Lysera continued to implement her vision. She encouraged young leaders to experiment with governance, gave artists freedom to create beyond traditional forms, and allowed engineers to innovate without waiting for network approval. The city blossomed with new energy, a vibrant blend of discipline and creativity, order and individuality. Citizens began to approach problems with curiosity and courage, inspired by the successes they had already witnessed. Through it all, Lysera's respect and admiration for humans grew. She saw in them a unique combination of intelligence, creativity, and moral courage that had reshaped her understanding of leadership, society, and the potential of life itself. Elias had arrived as a visitor, but his presence had become a catalyst for transformation. Not only for her, but for the entire city of Thryn. By the time the twin suns set one evening, casting the city in golden twilight, Lysera stood on the palace balcony, reflecting on the journey so far. She had witnessed fear give way to courage, hesitation replaced by initiative, and skepticism transformed into hope. Her people were changing, growing, and discovering the power within themselves exactly as she had envisioned. Elias joined her quietly. "You have done something extraordinary," he said. "You have not only embraced change yourself but inspired it in others. That is the mark of true leadership." Lysera smiled. "It is only the beginning. There is still much to learn, much to explore, and many more ways to grow. But I see now that courage, creativity, and individuality are gifts my people can embrace. With them, our future is limitless." Elias nodded, satisfied. "Then continue guiding them, princess. Continue showing them what they are capable of. Humans may have taught you the first lessons, but the next ones will come from you and your people." As night fell and the city lights shimmered below, Lysera felt a profound sense of purpose. She knew the challenges were far from over, but she also knew that she had taken the first steps toward a brighter future, a future where courage, ingenuity, and individuality could flourish alongside harmony, strength, and tradition. The transformation of Thryn was underway, and its heart was beating stronger than ever. The twin suns rose slowly over Thryn, casting long shadows across the city. Princess Lysera stood on the balcony of the royal palace, looking out at the streets below. Her heart was steady, yet filled with anticipation. The city had changed in ways few could have imagined. Citizens moved with purpose, discussing ideas openly, and tackling problems with a confidence that had seemed impossible only months ago. Lysera smiled, knowing that the transformation she had nurtured was finally taking hold. But peace was fragile. The rival kingdom had grown impatient, their schemes becoming more aggressive. Rumors of sabotage and espionage reached the palace daily. This time, the threat was serious. A coordinated strike aimed to disrupt the city's core energy network, while simultaneously stirring civil unrest among citizens hesitant to embrace individuality. Lysera knew that this was the ultimate test, not just for her leadership, but for the very changes she had worked to implement. Elias stood beside her, calm as always, observing the city below. "They are planning a complex attack," he said. "It is meant to catch you off guard and make your people doubt themselves. But you have prepared them, even if they do not realize it yet." Lysera nodded. "I have trained them to think, to act, and to trust their judgment. Now they must prove that what we have built is strong enough to survive real danger." The palace went into action immediately. Lysera coordinated teams of engineers, strategists, and volunteers. Each group was given autonomy to respond as they saw fit, guided by general principles rather than strict commands. This was a stark contrast to the previous leadership style, which relied entirely on rigid protocols and centralized decision-making. As the first signs of the attack appeared, citizens worked quickly. Sabotage attempts on the energy network were countered by creative solutions. Temporary reroutes, manual overrides, and innovative safety mechanisms. Citizens who had once followed orders blindly now took initiative, anticipating problems and resolving them before they could escalate. Lysera moved among them, offering encouragement and guidance when necessary, but mostly allowing her people to act independently. She observed how they had internalized the lessons of courage, creativity, and responsibility. It was a proud moment, witnessing her people respond to crisis not as obedient subjects, but as empowered individuals working toward a common goal. The rival kingdom's forces then attempted to create chaos in the city streets, spreading misinformation to undermine trust in leadership. Lysera had anticipated this and deployed teams trained in communication and reasoning. Citizens were encouraged to verify facts, discuss openly, and make collective decisions without waiting for orders from above. The misinformation failed to take root. Instead, citizens collaborated, resolved confusion, and strengthened their confidence in one another. Amid the chaos, Lysera realized that the lessons Elias had taught her had become ingrained in her own leadership. She no longer felt the need to control every detail or make every decision herself. She could guide, inspire, and trust her people, and they would rise to the challenge. The power of human-inspired individuality had taken root in Thryn, and the results were breathtaking. Hours passed, and the attacks continued, each one testing different aspects of the city's defenses. Citizens used creativity, initiative, and teamwork to respond in ways no single network or protocol could have anticipated. Lysera watched with awe as her people's courage and ingenuity turned potential disaster into opportunity. Every challenge was met with clever solutions, rapid adaptation, and fearless determination. Finally, the rival forces, frustrated and outmaneuvered, began to retreat. Their plans had failed spectacularly, not because of overwhelming numbers or technology, but because Thryn's citizens had learned to think, act, and adapt for themselves. The city had become resilient in ways that no rigid system could have achieved. In the aftermath, Lysera addressed the city from the grand balcony. The citizens gathered in the square, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of energy lights and the reflection of the setting suns. She spoke with confidence and warmth, her words carrying the lessons of the past months. "My people," she said, "today we have faced a threat unlike any before. We have seen courage in action, creativity in solving problems, and the strength of individuality working alongside unity. You have shown that we are not just a society of order, but a society of thinkers, doers, and dreamers. This is the path forward, and it is brighter than I ever imagined." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices echoing through the city. Lysera felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had seen the power of human-inspired leadership transform not just her own thinking, but the very heart of Thryn's society. The citizens had embraced change, proven their capability, and earned their own confidence. Elias stood beside her, smiling proudly. "You have done it," he said. "Your people have proven themselves. And you, Princess, have proven that true leadership comes from guiding and trusting those around you." Lysera turned to him. "It is because of you, Elias. You taught me to see beyond rules and protocol, to value courage and creativity, and to trust in the potential of individuals. But now, it is our people who have made it real. Humans may inspire, but it is Thryn that has acted. Elias nodded. That is how change lasts. Inspiration is the spark, but action is what builds the fire. Your people will carry this forward long after I am gone. In the days that followed, Lysera continued her reforms, solidifying the lessons learned during the crisis. Councils of citizens met regularly to propose innovations. Young inventors and artists were encouraged to experiment freely, and engineers worked on projects that combined precision with creativity. The city thrived like never before, a living example of balance between individuality and harmony. The rival kingdom, having witnessed Thryn's resilience, reconsidered its own methods. Leaders there began to understand that strength came not only from power and protocol, but also from the courage and creativity of individuals. Word spread to other worlds and star systems that Thryn had achieved something extraordinary, a society where disciplined order and bold individuality coexisted, creating unmatched innovation and stability. One evening, Lysera and Elias stood in the palace observatory, looking at the stars above. The twin suns had set, leaving a dark sky sparkling with distant lights. Lysera felt a profound sense of peace and purpose. I never imagined that one question, one conversation, could change everything, she said softly. Elias smiled. Sometimes, it only takes a question to open a new path. You took it further. You applied it, nurtured it, and helped others see the possibilities. That is what makes a difference. Lysera looked at him, gratitude shining in her eyes. You came to Thryn as a visitor, yet your presence has transformed not just me, but our entire society. Humans have a remarkable ability to inspire growth, and now I understand why. Elias shrugged modestly. We learn from each other, Princess. Every world has lessons to teach and to receive. Your willingness to embrace them is what makes your people strong. Lysera smiled, feeling the weight and wonder of her responsibility. She was no longer just a princess bound by tradition. She was a leader shaping a new era for her people. She had seen firsthand the power of courage, creativity, and individuality, and she was determined to continue guiding her society toward greater heights. The city below shimmered with life, a testament to what could be achieved when discipline met imagination, and when leadership trusted in the potential of its citizens. Lysera knew that challenges would come again, there would always be uncertainty and danger, but she was confident that her people, inspired and empowered, could meet anything. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. The future is yours, Lysera. You have the vision, the courage, and the people to make it extraordinary. Never forget what you have learned, and never stop asking questions. Lysera took a deep breath, feeling the resolve in her chest. I won't. This is only the beginning. We will continue to grow, to innovate, and to explore our potential. Thryn will become a beacon for others, showing that courage, creativity, and individuality can coexist with unity and harmony. As they watched the stars, the palace illuminated by the gentle glow of the city lights, Lysera realized something profound. Humanity had taught her about courage and individuality, but it was her people who had brought those lessons to life. Together, they had faced challenges, embraced change, and discovered strength they never knew they possessed. The night was quiet, yet alive with possibility. Lysera felt hope, pride, and determination intertwining within her. She knew that the transformation she had begun would ripple outward, shaping not only Thryn, but perhaps even other worlds that looked to her as an example. The journey was far from over, but she had proven that even in the most disciplined and ordered society, courage, creativity, and individuality could flourish, and that the future was brighter than any protocol or network could have predicted. As the stars twinkled above, Lysera whispered to herself, "We have only just begun." And with that, the Princess of Thryn, guided by the lessons of a human explorer, stepped fully into her role as a revolutionary leader, ready to shape a society where harmony and individuality would thrive together. forever changed by a single question and an answer that had illuminated a new path.